My beloved child. Tonight, before you sleep, before you turn the lights off and trust the silence of your walls, you must listen to this carefully, because what I am about to reveal is not a story meant to scare you, but a truth meant to wake you. Somewhere beyond your door, beyond the comfort you think is permanent, there is a presence that already knows the sound of your house, the rhythm of your life, and the exact moment when you feel safest. You believe safety comes from locks, routines, and familiar corners, but safety actually comes from awareness, and awareness begins with what you are about to hear. A stranger exists in the margins of your life, unnoticed, uninvited, and yet dangerously informed. This stranger does not rush. This stranger does not panic. This stranger waits, because waiting gives power. The key detail, the one your mind resists at first, is this. That stranger already has your house key. Not a copied guess. Not a forced entry plan. The real key. The one that fits perfectly. The one that opens without noise. The one that does not trigger alarms in your heart. And the night they plan to use it is closer than you think. Listen closely now, because this did not begin today. It began quietly, so quietly that you mistook it for coincidence. A conversation overheard. A detail shared without thinking. A moment when you assumed nobody was paying attention. But someone was. This stranger noticed how you leave, how you return, which light stays on, which room goes dark first. They notice the patterns you repeat when you are tired and the habits you follow when you are calm. To you, these are harmless routines. To them, these are instructions. They did not need to break in. They did not need to threaten. They simply needed patience and access, and both were given more easily than you realize. The key came into their possession not through force, but through familiarity. A borrowed moment. A trusted exchange. A time when you never imagined consequences could stretch this far. And now, as you sit watching this, thinking you are alone, the truth presses closer. This stranger is not guessing your life. They studied it. Now pause for a second and feel this. Your house is not just walls and furniture. It holds your breath, your pauses, your private thoughts. Every step you take inside it is a language, and someone has learned how to read it. The stranger knows which door you rarely check. Which window you assume is harmless. Which sound you ignore because it has always been there. This is not chaos. This is preparation. And preparation always comes before action. The scariest part is not the plan itself. It is how invisible the planning has been. No warnings. No obvious signs. No dramatic moments. Just subtle alignment. Events that seemed unrelated now begin to form a pattern. And once you see the pattern, you cannot unsee it. That is why this message reaches you now, before the moment arrives, before the lock turns, before the silence inside your house changes its meaning forever. You may be thinking this sounds impossible, exaggerated, unreal. That is exactly what makes it effective. The human mind rejects threats that arrive quietly. We are trained to respond to noise, not whispers. This stranger understands that better than you understand yourself. They rely on disbelief. They depend on your assumption that nothing like this could happen to you. That comfort is their cover. While you believe danger announces itself, they move freely. While you trust the familiar, they hide within it. And here is the part that tightens the chest. This stranger does not see themselves as an intruder. In their mind, they already belong inside your space. They already imagine the rooms. They already picture the entry. They already feel the floor beneath their feet. Because possession begins in the mind long before it becomes physical. And that mental entry has already happened. Now stay with me, because this is where everything shifts. The night they plan to enter is not random. It is chosen. It aligns with a moment when your guard is lowest, when your attention is divided, when your thoughts are elsewhere. That night carries significance you have overlooked. A date you associate with comfort. A time you believe is ordinary. That ordinariness is the mask. The stranger plans nothing dramatic. No chaos. No sudden moves. Just one simple action. Turning the key. And that is what makes this revelation once in a lifetime. Because danger does not always come as an explosion. Sometimes it comes as a click so soft that only those who are listening will hear it. And now you are listening. This is only the beginning. Listen deeper now, because what you are about to understand changes how you see every quiet moment around you. Silence is never empty. Silence is information. And the stranger you do not see has mastered silence better than noise. While you move through your days believing nothing has shifted, something already has. The air inside your home remembers more than you think. It remembers footsteps. It remembers pauses. It remembers where hesitation lives. This stranger learned those things without stepping inside, because true access begins long before the door opens. They watched how often you feel rushed. They noticed when you are relaxed. They memorized the difference. That knowledge is their advantage. You feel safe because nothing has happened yet. They feel confident because everything is already prepared. There is a reason this truth feels heavy in your chest, and it is not fear alone. It is recognition. Somewhere deep inside, you sensed small disruptions but dismissed them. A misplaced object. A light you thought you turned off. A sound you blamed on imagination. These moments were not accidents. They were tests. Not to harm. To measure. To confirm assumptions. The stranger needed certainty, not speed. Certainty that your attention would slide away. Certainty that your trust in routine would remain unbroken. And it did. Each ignored detail strengthened their plan. Each rational explanation you gave yourself made the path clearer for them. This is how unseen threats grow. They are fed by comfort and watered by disbelief. Now understand this carefully. The key is not the most dangerous thing they possess. The key is only permission. The real danger is familiarity. Familiarity dulls instinct. Familiarity convinces you that nothing has changed because everything looks the same. But unchanged surfaces can hide shifting intentions. The stranger knows which hours stretch longer for you. They know when your mind is tired. They know when you stop questioning your surroundings. That is why their plan feels effortless. They are not rushing against you. They are moving with you, matching your pace, blending into the rhythm of your life so perfectly that the threat feels impossible to isolate. And that is why this revelation matters now, before familiarity becomes the final lock that traps awareness outside. Here is the part most people never realize until it is too late. A stranger does not need hostility to cross a boundary. They need alignment. They need moments to line up. They need your attention to drift in predictable directions. And yours has. Not because you are careless, but because you are human. Humans trust patterns. Humans trust repetition. Humans believe tomorrow will behave like yesterday. This stranger is counting on that belief. They are counting on you to underestimate how much has already been noticed, how much has already been mapped. Because once a life is mapped, entry becomes a detail, not a challenge. And the night they have chosen fits into that map perfectly. Stay with this feeling, because it is not meant to overwhelm you. It is meant to sharpen you. Awareness is the one thing they cannot predict. Awareness breaks patterns. Awareness disrupts plans without making noise. The moment you truly see what has been forming around you, the balance shifts. This story is not about panic. It is about timing. It is about realizing that control does not belong to the one who waits in the dark, but to the one who turns on the light first. And this message is that light. What happens next depends on what you do with this knowing. Because the plan exists. The key exists. The chosen night exists. But the ending has not been written yet. There is something unsettling about realization, because once it arrives, it refuses to leave quietly. From this moment onward, your surroundings will feel familiar yet different, as if a hidden layer has been revealed. That feeling is not imagination. It is perception adjusting itself. The stranger did not expect this shift. They relied on one assumption alone. That you would never stop to question what feels normal. But now normal has cracks, and through those cracks, truth leaks in. The walls around you are the same, yet your awareness has changed their meaning. A door is no longer just a door. A key is no longer just metal. Everything carries intention now, and intention changes how power flows. What the stranger fears most is not resistance. It is unpredictability. They studied you based on who you were, not who you are becoming in this moment. Their plan depends on you staying consistent, staying distracted, staying comfortable. But comfort dissolves when awareness enters the room. You begin to notice pauses you once ignored. You question assumptions you once trusted. This shift may feel subtle, but it is enormous. Because plans built on certainty collapse when certainty disappears. The stranger cannot move forward if they cannot predict your next step. And right now, your next step is no longer obvious. Consider this carefully. Control is rarely taken. It is usually handed over, piece by piece, through inattention. Every time you delayed noticing something felt off, control slipped slightly away. Every time you chose explanation over observation, the gap widened. But that process works both ways. Control can be reclaimed the same way it was lost. Gradually. Quietly. Without confrontation. The stranger expects ignorance. They do not expect clarity. And clarity has just entered your thinking. That alone shifts the balance more than any physical barrier ever could. This is where emotional truth matters more than logic. Your instincts were never absent. They were merely softened by routine. That small unease you brushed aside was not weakness. It was information. The stranger underestimated that. They believed familiarity would silence instinct completely. They were wrong. Instinct does not disappear. It waits. And now it is awake. You do not need to act dramatically. You do not need to announce anything. You only need to stop being predictable. That change echoes louder than any sound. Understand this final point for now. The stranger planned entry, not resistance. They planned silence, not awareness. They planned confidence, not uncertainty. And uncertainty is now theirs. Because the moment you became aware of being watched, the watcher lost comfort. The moment you questioned the key lost power. This story is no longer moving in one direction. It has begun to turn. And when a plan turns against the one who made it, everything changes. Something shifts the moment awareness settles into your bones, because awareness has weight, and that weight bends reality in quiet ways. You may feel calmer on the surface, yet sharper underneath, like a still lake hiding deep currents. This is the phase the stranger never calculated. They expected fear or ignorance, not composure mixed with clarity. Their confidence came from believing you would remain unaware until the final moment. But now the timeline has fractured. Time no longer favors them alone. Every second that passes with you being alert changes the outcome, even if nothing visible happens at all. Understand this truth carefully. Plans built in secrecy depend on emotional distance. The stranger needed you detached from your surroundings, moving through your home on autopilot. But awareness reconnects you to space. You begin to feel your environment instead of just using it. Corners feel different. Sounds carry intention. Silence feels intentional instead of empty. This connection strengthens something ancient inside you. Something that notices before logic speaks. The stranger cannot read that instinct, because it was never written into their calculations. They studied habits, not intuition. And intuition does not follow schedules. There is also something deeply unsettling for the one who waits when the waiting stops being invisible. The stranger may still have the key, but possession no longer equals control. Control comes from certainty, and certainty has begun to erode. The plan relied on stillness, on your life flowing unchanged. But awareness creates ripples. Small adjustments. Slight variations. Enough to disrupt timing. Enough to introduce doubt. Doubt is the one thing a silent plan cannot survive. Because doubt forces hesitation. And hesitation breaks momentum. This is where emotional strength quietly replaces fear. You are not imagining danger. You are understanding dynamics. You are seeing how power truly works. Power is not loud. It does not announce itself. It shifts when perception shifts. The stranger believed power was in the key. They were wrong. The real power has always been in who decides when and how meaning changes. And meaning has changed now. The house is no longer just shelter. It is awareness embodied. A space that responds because you are present within it, not absent. Let this sink in before the story moves forward. Nothing dramatic needs to happen for everything to already be different. The stranger still exists. The plan may still exist. But dominance no longer does. Because the moment awareness entered, the balance tilted. And when balance tilts, outcomes follow. The next phase will not be about entry. It will be about reaction. And reaction, when guided by clarity, belongs to the one who sees first. Before the world outside wakes up, something important must be understood, because this is the moment where quiet knowledge turns into silent authority. The stranger's plan was never built for resistance, but more dangerously, it was never built for change. Change destabilizes even the most carefully prepared intentions. You have changed without making noise. That is why the energy around this situation feels different now. Not tense. Focused. The stranger still believes they are ahead of time, but time has already slipped sideways. Awareness has a way of bending outcomes before actions occur. What they thought was a straight path has become uncertain ground beneath their own steps. There is a psychological truth few people recognize until it matters most. The one who believes they are unseen behaves boldly. The moment they sense they might be noticed, even slightly, their confidence fractures. Not outwardly. Internally. The stranger may not know exactly what you know, but they will feel something is off. Plans that once felt smooth begin to feel heavy. Certainty becomes effort. Effort invites mistakes. This is not coincidence. It is cause and effect unfolding quietly. When awareness enters the equation, pressure reverses direction. The watcher becomes cautious. The planner becomes delayed. And delay is where control slips away. Now feel this carefully. Your house has not changed, but your presence within it has become deliberate. You are no longer moving through it unconsciously. That alone alters the atmosphere. Spaces respond to attention. Silence responds to intention. The stranger expected emptiness. They expected passivity. They expected you to be mentally elsewhere while physically present. That expectation no longer holds. Presence fills gaps that plans rely on. And gaps are where intrusion hides. Without gaps, intrusion has nowhere to stand. Here is the revelation that ties everything together. The night the stranger chose was based on who you were then, not who you are now. They chose timing assuming emotional distance, predictable rhythm, and unbroken routine. But routines fracture the moment awareness disrupts them. The night still exists on their calendar, but its meaning has changed. What they imagined as an entry point has become a moment of uncertainty. And uncertainty is not neutral. It favors the one who is awake, not the one who is waiting. Let this final thought settle. This story was never about fear. It was about realization arriving before action. The stranger may still hold a key, but the house no longer belongs to ignorance. It belongs to awareness now. And awareness does not need noise, warnings, or confrontation to win. It only needs to exist. Because once it does, every plan built in the dark begins to dissolve in the light of understanding. There comes a point where awareness stops being a thought and becomes a presence, steady and unshakable. This is that point. You are no longer processing information. You are embodying it. And embodiment changes everything. The stranger's plan depended on a version of you that no longer exists. That version moved automatically, trusted easily, and filled silence with assumptions. But you are no longer filling silence. You are listening to it. Silence now speaks back, and it speaks in clarity, not confusion. The balance has quietly, decisively shifted. What happens next is subtle, yet powerful. The environment mirrors your state. When your mind is clear, space feels organized. When your attention is grounded, uncertainty loses grip. The stranger feels this shift without understanding it. Their confidence, once smooth, now meets resistance that has no visible source. They hesitate without knowing why. They revisit details they once felt sure about. That hesitation is not weakness. It is instinct responding to disruption. And disruption has already occurred, simply because awareness arrived earlier than expected. This is where truth reveals its quiet strength. Nothing external had to change for control to return to you. No confrontation. No announcement. No visible movement. Control returned the moment you stopped being predictable. The stranger's advantage was never the key. It was assumption. The assumption that you would remain unaware. That assumption is gone. And without it, their plan loses structure. What remains is uncertainty, and uncertainty cannot guide action with confidence. Now understand this deeply. The outcome of this story was never fixed. It only felt inevitable because it was unseen. Visibility alters destiny. When something hidden becomes known, even partially, it loses its grip on the future. The stranger's timeline no longer aligns with reality. What they planned for no longer exists in the same way. The house is still the same place, but it is no longer the same situation. Meaning has shifted. And meaning directs outcomes more than actions ever do. Let this be the closing truth of this part. Awareness is not loud. It does not demand attention. It simply stands present, and presence rearranges power naturally. The stranger may still believe they are approaching a moment of entry, but in reality, that moment has already passed. Because the real entry point was ignorance. And ignorance no longer lives here. There is a quiet authority that settles in when understanding becomes complete, and that authority does not need validation. You feel it now, not as tension, but as steadiness. The kind that does not rush or react. The stranger's plan has reached its most fragile stage, because plans weaken when the other side becomes still instead of fearful. Stillness is unreadable. Stillness does not leak information. And without information, even the most patient observer loses direction. What once felt inevitable now feels uncertain, not because of force, but because the ground beneath intention has changed. This is the moment where the unseen line is crossed, not by entry, but by awareness surpassing preparation. The stranger built confidence on yesterday's version of you. But time does not move backward. While they waited, you evolved. While they assumed, you noticed. That gap between assumption and reality is where their certainty dissolves. The key they hold belongs to an old narrative. That narrative no longer applies. A key without context is just metal. Meaning is what gives it power, and meaning has shifted away from them. Something profound happens when fear is replaced by clarity. Fear narrows vision. Clarity widens it. You are no longer focused on a single imagined outcome. You see possibilities. You sense options. That expanded perception quietly neutralizes what once felt threatening. The stranger senses this change without understanding it. Their confidence no longer feels clean. Their timing feels off. They question without answers. And questioning weakens resolve, especially when the plan required absolute certainty to succeed. Now recognize this truth. Power does not always announce victory. Sometimes it simply removes inevitability. The stranger's greatest weapon was your unawareness. That weapon is gone. What remains is imbalance, and imbalance favors the one who is grounded, not the one who is waiting. Your home is no longer a passive setting in someone else's plan. It has become an extension of your awareness. And awareness reshapes outcomes before actions ever occur. Let this part end with certainty, not suspense. The story has already turned. Not because of confrontation, not because of force, but because perception changed first. The stranger may still believe the moment is approaching. But the truth is quieter and far more powerful. The moment they relied on has already dissolved. And when a plan loses its moment, it loses its future. There is a calm that arrives only after uncertainty loses its grip, and this calm is not passive, it is resolved. You are standing inside that calm now, even if you cannot fully name it yet. The atmosphere around you feels settled, not because nothing could happen, but because nothing controls you anymore. The stranger's plan required momentum. Momentum feeds on blind time passing. But time has slowed in a way they cannot sense or measure. Every assumption they made now floats without support, and unsupported plans eventually collapse under their own weight. What matters most here is not what the stranger might do, but what they no longer can rely on. They cannot rely on your distraction. They cannot rely on your silence being empty. They cannot rely on the environment staying neutral. Neutrality has shifted into awareness, and awareness subtly rearranges outcomes. Even if nothing visible changes, the internal structure of this situation has already been rewritten. The stranger stands on an idea that no longer exists. And standing on an idea that has expired leads nowhere. Notice how this understanding does not demand urgency. There is no rush inside clarity. That absence of rush is strength. The stranger expected tension. They expected emotional noise. They expected you to be overwhelmed. Instead, you are steady. Steadiness removes leverage. When nothing can be easily provoked, nothing can be easily controlled. This is where plans fail quietly, without spectacle, without conflict, without anyone else needing to know why. Here is the truth that seals this phase of the story. The stranger was never powerful. They were only informed. And information loses power the moment it stops being exclusive. What they thought only they understood has now been seen from another angle. Once a situation is seen from two sides, it can no longer move in only one direction. The future becomes flexible. And flexibility belongs to the one who is present, not the one who is waiting in outdated certainty. Let this realization settle fully. Nothing needs to be proven. Nothing needs to be shown. The shift has already happened. The house remains quiet, but it is no longer passive. It is alert through you. And when awareness occupies space, there is no room left for unseen intentions to grow. This story is no longer about an entry. It is about an ending forming quietly, long before anyone expected it.